When the engine's cold, starts up absolutely fine, turns over quickly, starts easily. But when it's hot, it's quite a different matter. It's very sluggish. This is what a hot start looks like on the car at the moment. As we're going to be working on the electrics, first job we need to do is disconnect the battery. So key in, turn to position 1 on the ignition, and then we need to take the cover off for the battery, and then we're just going to disconnect the negative terminal and move it so it's clear of the battery. The cable I'm going to be replacing is what's known as the Y cable. You can see part number there. So this has 3 connections on it. There's one here which goes onto the rear of the starter motor, one here which is the main connection point on the engine where it goes off the wiring loom, and one here which goes onto the back of the alternator. So looking at an engine, see where they are. This is an engine I've just recently taken out of one of my other cars. So here is the main connection to the loom. Now this is where the compressor normally sits for the air conditioning. I removed this when I took the engine out to save disconnecting it, so we can see the cable runs from there, and then it runs through underneath the intake, and then it goes back towards the starter motor, which is around here, so we can see that from this side. So there we can see the connection just there, and then it runs forward from there towards the alternator, which is up at the front. Now if we look at that when it's actually in the car, so this is what it looks like. So we can see the main connector there. What we can't see is everything else because it's all hidden behind here. So my first job is going to be to take the airbox out, and then I'm going to remove the throttle body and these connections on the front of the plane, which will enable me to get back towards where I need to be for getting towards the starter motor. I might have to take the compressor out to get this connector through because there's a very small gap. We'll see that when we get towards it.
And their plans for the future. And I think
to remove the airbox, we need to undo this earthing point bolt here, 13mm. Disconnect the electrical connector from the airflow meter. There's just a couple of prongs on the side. Push those in, just pull it out, and then remove it from the connector. Just this cable clamp here. And then undo one of the rings which hold it on, and then just unclip the oil pipe, and then that will just lift out. So very simple to remove. This is the main connection to the vehicle wiring loom for the positive, so we're going to have to unbolt this connection here. Then we just need to remove this off the bracket, so we can see there's a couple of bolts, nuts holding it on there. This solenoid here, this relates to the switchable exhaust. So if you don't have the switchable exhaust, you won't have that solenoid on there. The metal piece here just clips in here, and as you can see, it's held in by these 2 little plastic tangs. So the sides just need to be pushed apart to get it out. It is quite stiff. Then when it pushes out, there's a bolt that goes through it. This was also tight, so I had to grip this here to be able to undo it. But then with this bolt out, I'm hoping that will be able to pass through this gap down here. So that's done. So I'm going to take the throttle housing off now. Just bolt it on here. This one is an early car with a cable throttle, so I'll need to remove the cable, also remove the throttle potentiometer sensor there. And then with that off, we'll be able to see what's required across the centre. Throttle body is now off. There's a couple of connectors on this side. There's the idle speed control connector there, and then there's the connector. So that's the throttle position one there, and the idle speed control there. So they both need to be removed. Throttle position, just push the tab there to release that, and for the idle speed control, it's just one of these wire locks there. So with that out, I can now see this section. So I'm going to remove these clamps here and on here, and take the section out, and I'll remove this this connector here as well. I think these just squeeze and then pull out. So that's next. With the throttle body section out now, we can see through to the starter motor. So we can see the connector just there on the back of the starter motor, so we can get to that. When taking out these rubber couplings, there's a couple of vacuum pipes on these. These need to be taken out carefully. They just push those back in. And we need to be able to get to the rear of the alternator as well, so I'll be investigating how we can get around there. And now I've got this cable out here. Let's see if we can thread this part of the cable through. The cable pulled through relatively easily from this gap. It's all fine. It was also easy to remove from the back of the starter motor. That's off. So the only one left is on the back of the alternator, which is around here. I'm going to try and get in with a socket to get at it. Otherwise, I will have to remove the alternator, which isn't particularly difficult, but if I can avoid it, I will. It was never going to be easy to get the cable off the back of the alternator with the alternator in, so I took it out. There's just 2 bolts to remove, so take the tensioner, which sits down here, which is this. So the tensioner comes off, well, idler rather than tensioner, and then there's a single bolt down here. When you take the bolt out for the idler, which is this really long one here, it's worth take the idler out and then put the bolt back alternator out far enough to get the 30mm nut off there. So cable should now be free. This is the old wire cable that's out with the new one that's going to go in. I haven't removed the plastic off here, but here you can see the structure of it. So that piece sits, see, that's the back of it there. So that sits in there, and there's the bolt that goes through it. I'm going to soak this in some hot water. It wasn't easy to do on the car. The old one that's coming off, I wasn't bothered if I damaged the casing. As it happened, it didn't really, but I'm going to soak this in hot water just to make it easier to get the plastic off. The car's all back together now. The most awkward part is getting the alternator back in. It's tricky to get it through the hole, and getting the other parts of the inlet manifold back in with the rubber washers, the rubber sleeves. But now it's all back together. The engine's all been warmed up, so it's up to full operating temperature. Just been out for a half-hour drive, so now it's time for the moment of truth. That's immediately much better than it was, which is a relief. So it wasn't the starter motor. So there you go. It's taken me, I would say, probably a couple of hours to do the job. You don't need to get the car up in the air to do it. You can do it all standing on the ground. I used my lift to get it to a more comfortable height to work at, just because I had the car in for servicing anyway. So I did a oil and filter change, but there's no need for that. So yeah, not too hard a job. And if you've got a hot starting problem where the car starts absolutely fine when it's cold, but has the same symptoms as mine did when hot, then this could well be a fix for you. Good luck.